Hey everyone, so welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be making a follow-up of the painting video that I made of Gary V, and I'm just going to be explaining the ideas of creating the brushes and how to use the brushes also, as I promised that I would be doing those. But a few pointers before we begin. First is I'm going to leave links in the description for where I got those brushes. I didn't come up with them on my own. I did some research and found out. Also, another point is there is a lot of noise going on outside, so you'll excuse me for that. There are a lot of dogs and trains and cars, and it's really hard for me to block out that noise, so I hope I'll try as much as possible in post-processing to remove that noise. I'm going to begin with the first, which is the blending brush. We're going to begin with creating the blending brush, and what we're going to do, we're going to go with these dimensions of 50 pixels by 50 pixels at 300 dpi resolution. It's going to create this very tiny box shape here, so we can zoom in. To go to the brush tool and bring up the pencil tool. So the pencil tool will it will be bringing in those boxy shapes. Come over here, we want to have a very low opacity here in the center. We want to kind of have some dark values, but as we move outside, we're going to create some values which are kind of which have less opacity. So at the edges, it's going to have a really low opacity, like maybe 7 or 10, like that. And whereas outside, okay, so you can see in the navigation window there. So I'm just creating, on the outside it's going to have very low opacity values, while on the inside it's going to have relatively higher values of opacity. So once you have this, now we can go to edit and then define brush preset, and then just call it a blending brush. Because I have a brush in this name, so just call it whatever you want and click OK. If I want to blend these two colors, now I can go to the smudge tool, right, in the smudge tool, and I bring up my brush that I created. Okay, so when you bring up your brush that you created, now you would see here I have the strength value set very low at around 16. And when you blend, you'll see now that it begins kind of smoothing out those edges and allowing the colors to mix. Okay, so digital colors also do mix, just like traditional paint colors, and this is one of the ways that you can do the mixing part. The thing here is that you can also control the strength of how strong your colors do mix with each other. So for example, here now you see like the colors are kind of blending into each other, but if you increase the strength, it's again going to kind of move them very far apart. Okay, so for example, you can do that, and when you want to shift the color very quickly. But for the most part, when you're blending, you're going to work over it slowly by doing this over and over again, and it kind of blends into the colors that you are working with. So this is how I achieved the smooth skin feel when I was painting Gary V's portrait. Okay, we're going to now move on to the next one, and we're going to create the first hairbrush, which is actually the long hairbrush. So for this, what you do is you go to the selection tool here in the marquee tool section, and let's create a new layer above it, and we just kind of select, make circles, make a perfect circle like that, and then we're going to fill it with a color, right? So we're going to fill it with black like that, and then we can now duplicate it. We can now bring in our tool here, and we're going to duplicate it. Basically, we're making different variations, but when you're making variations, again, I'm also decreasing the value, so I can also adjust the weight, the sizes of these shapes, so that I get maybe 3 variations: a very small one, a medium, and a large. And then I'm just going to move them around to form a few strands. And so again, I go to edit, and define brush preset, and I call it maybe long hairbrush. You now select the brush that we just created. Now you have kind of these dots, okay? So you can see that there are dots like that. The brush properties, you can now begin adjusting, for example, the spacing, okay? You can see the spacing, and then if you turn on shape dynamics, now you see that it has those tapered edges. So when you come in, you see now it's like that, okay? And again, you can do a lot of other things. You can, for example, add texture to it if that's what you are going for. Another thing you can do is to, when you come and you have your Wacom tablet, or if you have a tablet with pen sensitivity, pen pressure and stuff, you can kind of turn on your opacity so that you have those soft, smooth edges. Let me turn off this texture thing here, and here again in shape dynamics, you can go in there and kind of change the values, make it, can change the value of how the hair kind of fades in and out. So you can see now, like, you have that sort of feel. Okay, it's starting to feel like hair. And again, you can then go in and kind of tweak around these textures. So when you're now painting, you can go in detail. So for example, here, forget that. When you go small, and it's now a very small brush, you can see now that it begins forming those very small trends. Now this brush, I used it on the upper part of his head, where I was laying in those hair that I wanted it to feel soft and stuff like that, okay? Another way you can also make a hairbrush, it's by, if you want to make a single stroke hairbrush, I also use that. You can just go click this, for example, this hair, this first part here. If you don't want to go through this hard time, just click the first one and then go to the brush properties, and then specify, for example, turn on your shape dynamics, and under the shape dynamics, you can then change, for example, the sizes here, okay? So you can see now when you kind of change the diameter and make it very thin, okay? And then when you come in actually and you begin painting, it's going to kind of give it that single hair straight. So for example, if you want to create a single hair, okay, you could use that and And also I also used this, if you look closely you'd see I used this mostly in the upper hair sections, okay? But when for example, if I'm painting female hair, right, I will normally use these properties here. I'll just come in, and it's very important that you understand how this work, so that you can choose the settings based on exactly what you want to come out with, okay? So for the beard brush, you don't have to all we're using is the normal brush, okay, so which is this soft edge brush, and you don't have to turn on shape dynamics if you don't want to opacity and stuff. But what we want to do is to create just one single thing like this. If you want, you can kind of get a reference photo, or where you can compare your stroke to the normal beards of a person. But in general, I'm going to just create something very small like this, okay? And then when you're done, you just basically want to come over here and say again define brush preset. So this is going to show you your kind of single brush that you just created there, and then you say, let's say okay, and now you see you have this kind of thing which is just like this. Now here this is not showing anything, okay? But what we want to do is we want to kind of now begin tampering around with these shapes and the shape dynamics. First we're going to turn on, we can turn on shape dynamics if you want, okay? But then the diameter we can bring it up and whatever. And here the spacing, you can again change it the way you want, because it differs from beard to beard, because sometimes the beards are scattered, for example. So there you may want to add some scattering. But when you add scattering, it's going to come out like that. Okay? But then there are things again that you can go about. So if you're in scattering, if for example you're in scattering, okay, you can kind of tweak around this to see how it scatters, and then you can specify the amount of scatter that happens. So it's going to scatter three in volumes of 3, for example. And again, another thing you can control is the rotation, or like how you want the beards to kind of behave. So if for example you want them to be like this whenever you go down and up, so you can control that in the angle section there. If you don't want this kind of effect where it's giving some of them randomly falling out of line, you can turn off shape dynamics, for example, and you'll have all of them now facing one direction. You can also decrease this brush again, and you have those kind of soft soap. And when I was making Gary's beard, that's what I was doing. If you come over here in the, let's say, the shape dynamics in the brush here, you can kind of space them apart, okay? And then it helps you get those beards which are kind of lying down like that, okay? The possibilities of using these things is endless, and all you have to do is to kind of explore. I'll leave everything, the links in the description down below, and yeah, let me know in the comment section below if there is anything that you didn't understand, if there is anything that you want me to repeat. I'll be happy to help. But other than that, just go create, stay awesome, be amazing. Till next time. Peace.